We are live.
Hey, everybody. We're live with Moto Talk with Steve and Kim.
I hope you're alive.
Hope you are live as well. This won't be live when we end the recording, and it just sits there in the cloud on YouTube and Facebook.
Where you can go look at it 4 or 5 times.
I hope you're all doing well. We are going to talk about our little trip this last week. We went to Mid-Ohio Vintage Days 2021 after 2 years off. And boy, it was busy out there. Lots of vendors, a lot of crowd, and probably some of the best weather that there has been for many years.
Yeah,
I would expect.
Wasn't unmanageably hot, wasn't unmanageably wet. It rained in the night, but not all day. That was good. But David Aldana was the master of ceremonies there, and or grand marshal, I should say, and he brought some stuff that was in the AMA museum. That was cool.
Do you have pictures on there of that?
I do.
Okay,
I have pictures of
we'll
some
talk
of that.
about those as we go.
But if you don't know who David Aldana is, you go back to old school in the 70s. The items that he was most famous for were wearing a bones outfit on his leathers. He had a skeleton. He was national number 13 and was a perennial competitor for all the dirt races he ran on. He was an effective road racer. And his nickname was Mr. Rubberball because he crashed a lot.
Oh, man.
And he got up and went. He didn't break things. Other people did. And he continued to ride after he fell.
Wow.
So that was cool.
Awesome.
I never saw Dave at the
He could have been the part of the Fantastic Four.
He could have been. Yeah, he would have been Mr. Rubberball.
Roger, did you go out there this year?
If you did, you didn't come see us.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Chuck Carter didn't come see us either. I saw him running around on his one of his little pit bikes.
John Hill didn't come see us.
We did a show or two talking about Mid-Ohio. If you haven't been out there, it's is it Lexington, Ohio, or is it Mansfield? I mean, it's like right next to Mansfield. But Mid-Ohio Race Park, there's a vintage motorcycle swap meet, road racing, motocross, trials, you name it. And it's a lot of fun. It's one of the biggest events like that in the U.S. And we try to go every year, except last year, of course. And we had a fun time. The weather was just incredible. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it was in the 80s, got down to even in the high 50s at night. It was so awesome. And then the temperature came up a little bit on Saturday.
And Wednesday was a nice night to stay in Central Ohio, even though you weren't in the racetrack.
Yes, it was. Yes. Do we need to talk about that?
Nah.
We went out the wrong day. Tom and I went out the wrong day, but we made fun with it and stayed at this campground with a lake and this little, I don't know, trailer kid wielding a knife with a fake squirrel hanging around his neck.
Well, the good part of that was the next morning when you needed to go to the racetrack, you were really close.
There. We were like 10 minutes away.
You didn't have to drive 5 hours.
We got in and set up our booth. We were probably one of the first ones to be set up and done, and we just kind of chilled. It was awesome.
Yep.
So yeah, we're just going to go straight to some pictures and stuff and talk about some of the things we did, some of the things we saw. It was a great time.
So aside from the weather, I'm going to say, every time I've gone, I've had a great time on this particular trip, with the exception of not selling as many things as I'd hoped. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, it was a solid 9.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I think I laughed more this trip than I have the last like 3 years. It was quite a riot.
I think that might have been the Woodford Reserve.
Yeah. One of our new guys at the shop, Tom Conley. This was him at the Shenanigan track. So this track you see in the background is just an oval dirt track that everybody rides around that wants to. It's in the middle of the campground
all day and all night.
I call it the Shenanigan track, but this guy photobombed the picture, and both of these guys, it was their first time there. So they were just having a great time.
So I'm going to tell you another story about Tom when we get to some other pictures.
Okay.
And
I'm just going to go in order of these pictures. They're kind of random. We saw Hannah and Ty. Ty was the winner last year, I think, of the slow race at the shop.
At the shop, open house. We had the open house. Yep.
And
friends of the shop, local
friends of the shop.
Well, actually, northern Indiana people, I think.
I don't know. I
think they rode a long distance on that Sportster in the rain to get there.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Anyway, Ty and I, we went out on the shenanigan track, and he was ripping around on this little 80. Had a lot of fun. It was good to see you guys there. This was, I think, when you got there.
Yeah, that was me and Joe Franks.
Joe Franks and Kim brought several bikes. One of them was mine. One was an H2 that Keith had sold to somebody, and then you brought three bikes or so, and then we all brought pit bikes. So you got to have a pit bike out there. So
yep.
This one here is this is the bike that I sold.
That gets the award for the sold bike out of our area.
The sold bike, 83 1100F, a little rough, and this gentleman wanted to buy it, and he was actually thinking about going home to DC and getting a trailer and coming back, and that was 7 hours one way.
Ugh.
And I talked him into taking the bike apart enough to get it into his minivan, which is basically
and he got it in there, and there was no room for anything else.
That was true,
because it was full of other stuff.
All right,
but he was an intrepid buyer. He was interested in getting after it.
He wanted an engine. He had another 1100F, and he needed an engine for parts. This is kind of a funny picture once I really got to looking at it.
Yes.
This was our setup. So Tom brought his camper. We have a couple canopies, and I think Kim, were you getting tired here of
so
trying to sell your bike?
Here's what happens when you go to Mid-Ohio. You take your clean bike, and it not only does it get dirty, which is no big deal, but you have people who at least say they're interested in it. This guy was one of them that said, can we roll it out of the tin? I'm going to send a bunch of pictures. I'm sure my son's going to want to buy it. You might as well not sell it to anyone else. The price is fair. I love the bike. I'm just going to send him some pictures, and then I'll go get the money and I'll bring it back. And Tom, having not ever been there before, really, really took on a role that I wouldn't have expected Tom to take on. Every time someone would come in there and say, oh, I had one of these, or my dad had one of these, or my son's got one of these, whatever it is, Tom would say, well, are they going to buy anything, or are they just in here to talk about what they have or didn't have or whatever? And eventually it got to the point where I said, what I need to do is get Tom a spike collar and a chain. So whenever somebody comes in, if they don't show their wallet right away, Tom can Tom can go in there and bite them. So from now on, Tom is the shop watchdog. And yes, a lot of people looked at that, and the 750 and the Super Hawk and the Super 90 that I took, and not one of them sold. So, I probably could have sold the Super 90 if I hadn't had such a hard head about the guy that wanted to buy it. He was not somebody I enjoyed.
And you didn't necessarily want to sell them.
I didn't want to give them away.
You didn't mind bringing them home if they didn't get what you wanted for it.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, when you go to Mid-Ohio to sell a motorcycle, you've got to be in the demographic. And if you're not in the demographic, the odds that you sell it are lower.
Right.
People are in there to get a great deal. Like on Steve's bike, they got a tremendous deal.
Yeah.
And I wasn't there to give them away. And that means that they, A, have to appreciate what it is, and B, have to be willing to spend the money. And I didn't find anybody that actually came through, even though several said they would.
Plus, it's what's hot. If there's something hot, they are going to get that ridiculous money that a lot of those guys are asking. But you'll go through there, and it's every swap meet is kind of the same. If you go up to the Lebanon swap meet here in Indy, the same guys bring the same junk, and they take the same junk home. So
most of the time,
sometimes it'd be nice if you just brought something different, something that's going to sell.
Speaking of hot, one of us bought one of the hot motorcycles.
Here you go.
That one right there.
Someone was asking if any of us sold something and bought something. So I sold the 1100F, and I bought this CT70, and I'll bring it home and sell it and make a little bit of profit on that.
Yeah, that's a riding motorcycle.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have the correct seat. I don't think it has the correct
it doesn't have the air box
carburetor,
or any of that stuff.
But it'll still bring the money to make a little bit of profit. Here's another shot of our booth with all the bikes in it and our pit bikes. It was a nice spot at top of row U. It doesn't really get any better.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that must be early in the morning, because we had overcast like that eventually went away, and it was sunny.
Right. Now here's my grill that I own
And his grill.
in Mansfield. No, this was a grill that we tried out, and they had some really good food. This is in Mansfield, Steve's Dakota Grill. So had to take a picture out where that is.
And shout out to Steve for paying for dinner when we went there.
Oh, you're welcome. This was one of our spots that we learned from Keith and company when he's able to make it out there. One of the straights before the last turn, and Tom and I were out here watching. We were watching Peter Cavon, and he won his first ever. Well, he got his first ever first place.
Yeah,
and I think it might have been 2 because I think he probably got one the next day.
Yeah, I think there were 4 bikes in his class, and he outran them all.
He's usually a top 3 rider anyway, but he had a good time doing that. Tom and I were out here checking it out, and
you can see Steve's ride there, the RV90, which everybody wanted to buy.
Yep,
and
that's
you can't
Keith
quite
Carlson's
see
bike.
Tom's motorcycle, but you will in a minute.
Will we? Oh yeah, we do have it in here somewhere.
Yeah, I got a couple.
Oh, here it is. It's the next one.
Yeah, so
there he is starting that bad boy.
So that is a $25 yard sale mini bike with no improvements at all,
with $100 seat on it,
with a $100 seat and a Predator 212cc pull start motor. So that thing makes, gosh, probably 15 horsepower.
That thing actually had a lot of torque. It was funny.
Yeah, and it was so unmanageable. Tom looked like he was completely out of control every time he got on the thing.
This one here, I guess I wasn't really going to show it, but
I'll explain that. I won't ask you.
Go ahead.
So this is Steve mimicking an individual who came into our booth with several pockets full of levers, and he was comparing them to the levers on every motorcycle in the booth.
Just regular dirt bike levers.
Yeah,
basically.
And he was saying, "Oh, I wonder what this one is." And again, to be fair,
I think he'd been drinking.
That, and I'm sure he had other issues in his life. We'll show you a picture of their booth here in a minute, and that'll explain it a little bit.
That will here. Yeah. So we have some really cool rides that come they come by the booth, and I'll tell you, just sitting and people watching is something else.
That's a dad and a son right there. Dad leading the way on his chopper, and the son right next to him. And this is a dad and 2 sons in front of the booth that had the remains of what I didn't sell. I sold everything else I took, but none of that stuff. And our friend, the Levermeister, his area is behind that, but I've got another.
Yeah, we've got a better picture of that. This was a cool one. I missed this gal coming down the lane playing her violin.
Yeah, so it was right after rain. It was pretty early in the morning, and it's still relatively quiet. I mean, there's still motorcycles going in every direction, and it seems like everybody with a 430 Husky and no muffler at all is right in your ear, so you can't even carry a conversation. But the entire time the morning was playing out, this young lady, who she couldn't have been more than 17 or 18, was just walking happily through the area by herself playing that violin, and she was really skilled. I'm not sure that it was anything that got traction on most of the guys in there, but it was interesting that she chose to do that. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, it looks like she has some stuff in her tip jar there, so hopefully she was getting a few little tips. So.
Yep, I gave her a tip.
Don't
come back to Mid-Ohio.
Don't come back to Mid-Ohio.
I like that picture because it's a chronometric speedometer and an old Triumph Thunderbird with a phenolic on and off switch and an amp gauge and all that stuff. That's all factory stuff in that nacelle. Pretty cool stuff you see. Little guy in the basket. There were lots of dogs. And that little guy had health problems. That's why he was in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay. He had breathing problems and heart problems, and the guy was giving him medication, and he said he didn't want to exclude him from going around and traveling, but thought he would give him a nice, comfortable place to be while he was out there.
Tom had some breathing problems.
A little bit, yeah.
Tom got hay fever one night. He sneezed 25 times in a row. So
and Steve didn't have any breathing problems in the middle of the night. He sounded like an F-14.
I was practicing riding for the next day.
Yeah, it sounded just like
that. Now this is an awesome Harley.
Yeah, it came by, and you think it's going to be a CB750 when you hear it, but then you look up, and there it is. That was actually in the bike show that was sponsored by the Old Bike Barn, and it got an award. I'm not sure what award it was, People's Choice or something, but
it has real pipes on the back.
A real muffler.
750s.
Yeah, and
It has a real side cover and badge.
Has the obligatory PBR can sealing the muffler up to the exhaust pipe. And it actually sounded fairly good.
It did sound good.
I mean, it sounded like a CB750, but what they did was they built a CB750 that weighed 300 pounds more than a CB750. So the Lever Boy is in that group somewhere. And the thing that you can't make up is the name of their business was Vintage Movement. And we made many jokes.
There were a lot of jokes about movements.
These old guys having a vintage movement. And one interesting thing about these guys, and it was kind of hard to capture a picture of it, is they must be old-timey guys that come to Mid-Ohio all the time and in that spot.
They've probably been going there 20 years plus.
And they must have many friends of their area that come there, and every one of them is either beyond the ability to cohesively think or whatever. And what they were doing was they'd roll up on their pit bike and park it right in front of our tables and motorcycles and everything, so that the people trying to come into our area couldn't even get in there.
Yeah. One guy parked his bike right in front of Kim's bikes and went over there and sat down, started talking with the guys. And for probably a half hour, Kim went and moved his bike down the alley a little bit. And when he came back to look for it, he
couldn't find it. And he was looking around and he looked at me and he's like, oh, he finally saw it and he was like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even think about that. And I thought, yeah, no, you didn't. And
yeah,
so
that's right, buddy.
Get
out of our Kool-Aid there.
So there's the crew sitting around.
Okay, so here I'm actually pointing. If you look at my face, I'm pointing at Lever Boy. I don't know if you saw that one or not.
Yeah, and Tom's getting madder by the second. He's getting ready to go bite that guy.
Ready to chew him out. Yeah.
And Joe is so nice to everybody. He was like, "Oh yeah, I think that goes to something else."
Yep.
Okay, so we have some masters in our midst, and guys that watch this show have some mad skills, and one of them is Barry Schonberger. He not only takes on esoteric builds, but he's got all the skills necessary to do it exactly the way it should be done. That is a bike with provenance and was raced in Indiana. That's an 88H number. If you were ever a novice or an amateur in Indiana, your appendage letter was H. And this bike is very famous. You can't really tell in this picture, but in order to make it more effective at flat track and turning left, it's almost like a Neil Keen solid axle frame in the back, but the engine is about 4 inches to the right in that frame. So when you sit on it, it's very obvious. I just didn't take a picture of that, but that is a beautiful handmade motorcycle.
Nice.
So
here's a Husky.
Well, it's not just a Husky.
Husky Joe will like this one.
Yes, and everybody on this call who has ever seen the movie On Any Sunday, that is the Husky that was actually under Malcolm Smith during the entire show when they were riding together. So, we went to Barber a couple of years ago and they sold Steve McQueen's Husky for, I want to say it was $165,000 His. It was very much like this one. And this one is not restored either, but it's the bike that Malcolm Smith rode in On Any Sunday. So again, if there's a more famous motorcycle in a movie, it's hard to imagine what. Another Barry Schonberger bike, it's a Tohatsu Run Pet Sport. And,
good job, Barry.
Yeah, for those of you who've never even heard of that thing, it's a very nice, sought after piece of old Japanese bike history. It's a 62. So it's got some great styling and some beautiful lines. There's one of those at Barber that's considered a museum piece, and that one's every bit as good as it.
Yeah. That's Barry for you.
Yep. So Husky tank looks like maybe a CR 250 tank, a narrow version of it that you could just buy off the table. That was one that was for sale. I didn't inquire about the price, but my guess is that's probably a $400 or $500 tank because it's pretty original. I'll let you speak to that one.
Okay. So
other than the pliers on the carburetor parts,
before we got to our spot, this is Mike Hans. So Hansi's Garage, you've heard of him. He actually was able to weasel his way into getting the spot next to ours somehow, which was a spot that a Cowie guy had for years and years, and just must not have been able to make it this year. And I think Hans called them several times to try and find a spot, and then happened to find the spot actually right next to us. And
maybe dumb luck and circumstance that he got that spot.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it either, but that's Mike at the top of his game using a pair of pliers to adjust a carburetor part.
Oh, there you go. So he's trying to fix up a bike to ride, and the tank had a hole in it. And so he's on the ground trying to figure out what's
And before
going on
you
there.
ask, that hat he's wearing, the Budweiser hat, that's made out of plastic paper. And it has a reason to be on his head that has nothing to do with him thinking it's stylish. His dad, his dad had a history of wearing something like that. His mom made a Budweiser shirt or jacket or something for him. So that is an homage to Mike's dad. So if you think it's goofy looking, then get over it, because it has a reason to be on his head.
And it's red, white, and blue. So America.
Yeah, right. He's got blue jeans on. Again, those of you that followed AMA racing back in the day, big development here. This is an XRTT, one of only a couple of them that were ever made. The late Cal Rayburn ran that thing in the Trans-America series or Transatlantic series. And it's as raced. It's just absolutely magnificent to look at. I will point out down at the bottom of the picture, there's a thing that says, please do not touch the motorcycles. And when I was talking to Tom and I went over there.
Oh no.
And when I was telling Tom about the features of that bike, he's got his hands all over it. And I said, Tom, read this thing. They're going to kill you.
Don't touch it.
Or throw us both out. That's a Hodaka that was right across from us. If you look behind you or behind the Hodaka, there's a beautiful Penton Jack Piner. There's a beautiful.
This was across from us.
Yeah. There's a beautiful Husky 250 WR, just like one I had. And this was a heavily modified Hodaka race bike, and it was really beautiful. Kernut shocks on it, some kind of aftermarket pipe, air cleaner, and all that stuff. And he fired it up for people that were interested in it, and it sounded great.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was very crisp,
really, really nice. Whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
Where'd this come from?
One of the things that we needed when we were there was a generator, and Steve took the initiative to buy one and bought one that was capable of dual fuel.
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
And they didn't specify what fuel it would run on, but it ran out of gas. And so Steve's
out of LP.
Steve's filling it up again.
Oh my God. Okay. Let's get away.
Or at least trying to
one.
hit the hole. There's that 250 Husky.
I must have got two pictures of that one. Maybe I'd rather go back to something else. This guy.
So there's the famous line, show us your, right?
Yeah.
So this guy didn't even have to
He
be
was
asked.
already doing that as he was walking down the aisle.
And in fact, we
It's
asked
actually
him.
a shirt that would pull down. He was just hot.
Yeah. Well, we
And
asked,
not
hot
in
in that sense.
Yeah.
But we asked him to come over closer so we could get a picture. And he actually pulled his shirt down to come over and to get a picture.
Yeah. So that was gentlemanly like, I guess.
Yeah.
So this guy won this. What is this? A spider bike or something?
It's
I can't remember.
Elite that was custom painted by some artist.
Okay.
And they did a really good job as
And
much
they
as
had
that looks
some
funky.
type of thing where they had to pass this trophy around or something. But
yes, if they won the bike of the meet somehow or another, it's a women's league bowling trophy.
Oh, okay. So they got it.
them.
Okay. All
and
right.
they have to put it on their bike and drag it around.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Beautiful Elsinore 125 that
Nice
was
one.
in the same booth as that Hodaka. This one of the things you get when you walk around the meet and you see people is you overhear conversations. And I watched the guy take this out of the trailer, and there was 4 or 5 people that were standing around looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody said, I used to have one just like that. And the guy that, without missing a beat, the guy that owned it and was moving stuff out of the trailer,
No, you didn't.
said, well, you can have this one for about $50 because I can't start the SOB.
Oh no.
And it was like, okay,
Well,
so it's a Victor 441 and they are notorious.
I would have
for being
given
on
him
the
$50 for it.
This is the 1969
This is cool.
AMA championship winning Harley KR that Mert Lawwell rode. And what you see there is the lower end of what eventually became a Sportster, but it's a flathead engine that was pretty common in flat trackers back in the day. Behind that air cleaner are 2 38 millimeter Mikunis feeding that relatively small cylinder. And one of the other things that Tom couldn't believe when I showed him this is that in that era, the Class C flat trackers were not allowed to have any brakes at all.
Oh, okay.
None. So if
wow.
you show that picture again,
Yeah,
you'll see there are no brakes on that bike.
Oh my, yeah.
And once in a
That's
great
crazy.
while, they had a compression release. That one didn't have either one. So if you wanted to slow down, you left it in gear and you let the clutch out.
Okay.
That's all you could do.
Well, here's some more friends that we know. They stopped by. The Wilkinson brothers stopped by on their Urals, and one of them is a 2-wheel drive, one's a 1-wheel drive, and they are twins. You can see both of them, Corey and Casey, on the left. And don't ask me which one is Corey and which one is Casey.
I think it's Corey on the left in the hat, and Casey without the hat.
Okay.
More beard. The thing about the Wilkinson brothers is, if you don't already know them, they've got a place in the Carmel Arts District, and they do marketing and they do promotions.
They're
and they
super great marketers,
super skilled guys. And
they actually market these bikes,
yep.
or help them market the bikes.
Yeah, and if you look on it, it says by the Wilkinson brothers on the bikes. And so
Yeah.
if you do go to Automobilia this year, they'll be there either walking around or showing us what's what. The one thing I want to say about this is those 3 boys in the middle, the green shirt, the one in the middle, and the
Yep.
one
in front of me.
Yeah, the one in front of Steve. Those are arguably the best behaved young men I think I've ever met.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, because their dads get swarmed by a lot of different people, because they're pretty well known.
Yep.
And the kids get to sit there and wait until their dads are done, shooting the stuff.
And that can be an hour.
And it could be, and they'll hang around the bikes and they'll talk and look around, and yeah, they're super well behaved.
The kid in the green shirt, last time we went, it was 95 degrees out. It was miserable, and he was starting to pale out and start to look like he was going.
Yeah.
We were pouring water on him and putting cold cloths on him, and he came around, but here he is again. He's looking a little pale in that picture. But,
yeah, he's fine though.
He hung in there.
This is the Rinaldas.
Yes, this is
the
only, or at least at the meet this year, that's the only CBX heavyweight AMA motorcycle in the vintage class. The guy on the left that says Ringo, that's Jan Ringnalda. And the guy with the leathers on looking at the motorcycle is Robbie.
Yep.
And they have a great business. I'm going to show you a picture here in a minute. Steve's going to show you another picture. Robbie at that meet but go back to the CBX. At that meet on that bike, he won the AMA National Vintage Championship in the heavyweight class on that motorcycle that day.
Oh, okay.
So he got a good award, and he also ran the 600 class.
He was cruising pretty good on that thing.
Yeah, he can really haul.
He's a big boy.
Yes, and the thing that was interesting is I was there visiting them and talking to Jan. Jan is a super knowledgeable guy. He and a guy named Ian Foster wrote a book about CBXs that now is pretty much known as the Bible of CBXs. But Jan, super skilled guy, knows all there is to know about racing and motorcycles in particular, but he's got a particular lane, which is Hondas. And that bike is one of many CBXs they own, but they buy and sell CBXs regularly. And they do quite well. They've got a shop in Ohio, and it's called Mr. CBX. So if you go look at mrcbx.com, you'll find them.
Okay.
So in the AMA area, where the bike show was, there were some absolutely drop dead gorgeous bikes. And one of them was this one. And if you know anything about Honda motorcycles back in the day, in the 80s, that is an NR 750. That's the oval piston, 4-valve, or actually 8-valve per piston, where Honda tried to make a V8. It was illegal to run a V8 in AMA racing at the time.
Wow.
So they homologated that bike, and the pistons are not round, they're oval. And I mean, like, significantly oval.
There's
a flat surface on one side and the other.
That's crazy.
And they had to make rings to seal them up.
Wow.
They had 8 valves in each one of those.
Did it run very good?
It was really strong, but they tried to make it competitive in MotoGP, and it wasn't.
Just wasn't. Yeah.
So what it became was a $60,000 in 1983
paperweight,
a $60,000 bike that nobody could ride or afford. And Jan has one of those. It's one of the only ones you'll ever see. And it was really, I can't imagine what it must be worth today, being 60 grand back then. So it's cool.
So to John Hill, who saw any Sunday,
Clamforths, yeah,
they actually played that over on the hill where the motocross was going on outside.
Yeah.
One of the nights, I think it was Saturday night.
Yeah.
There at Mid Ohio. All right, last picture.
If there is somebody on here who hasn't seen on any Sunday, go see it.
Oh, we got 2 more pictures.
Yeah, so this is just an example of what you see there. That's a cylinder and head. And the person's very specific about what that's for, so you don't make a mistake. it's really common for people to go through there and pick something up and go, well, this looks like that. And they buy it and they go home and they throw it away. This is not that. This is very specific. So if you had a bull Matador Mark V, 73 or 74, and it was a 250, that's what you needed to go do what you were going to do with it. And that was unusual. Most of the time, there's a pile of parts, not usually like this.
Right.
You have to figure it out.
And at the end of the week, we wanted to just lay down like a dog and and recoup. This is a picture you took of a dog chilling out.
That guy was there. That old fella had been traveling with his artist owner brother, and they hung out, and he was in the shade with plenty of water and plenty of people, telling him he was a good boy. So,
that's cool.
If you like dogs, Mid-Ohio is another place to go see cool dogs.
Yeah, it is. And just didn't do any announcements today, but Hoy Vintage Cycles is going to have an open house September 11th, which is the anniversary of 9/11. So in honor of those who helped out, and the first responders and all that, we're going to try to do our open house on September 11th this year, and we're going to have some few vendors. We'll have some food, we'll have some fun and games, and we're also going to take donations to help pay for some of the festivities, but also half of that is going to go towards some charities, and it will be the children of the first responders for 9/11, and then we're going to also offer some money to some local charity here that we haven't really figured out yet. I think it might have something to do with Riley Hospital. So cool. Do you have anything else to say? You got a safety tip?
Well, I don't have a safety tip, but my tip for the day is A, go to Mid-Ohio, and B, keep your head on a swivel, because you just won't believe all the different things you might see when you're there.
It's motorcycle overload out there. Yeah. And as we cut out with the music, I'll play a little video of me riding Keith Carlson's RV90 on